Imagine you're sitting in your high school chemistry classroom.
Right, yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah, just kind of staring at the wall. And there is this one constant, inescapable image in like every chemistry lab in the world,
A
right?
periodic table of elements.
Exactly, the periodic table. And it's always presented to us as this ultimate flawless blueprint of reality.
Oh, absolutely. The bedrock of physical science.
Right. You have the atomic number, which is, just the number of protons. Hydrogen has one, helium has two, lithium has three, and so on.
Simple enough.
And the logic is that as you add protons, as you march forward through the numbers, well, the atom gets heavier, atomic number goes up, atomic mass goes up.
A heavier building block makes a heavier element. It just makes intuitive sense.
It does, except, and this is where it gets wild,
Mm-hmm.
there's a glaring, massive contradiction sitting right there in plain sight.
A pretty famous one, if you know where to look.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at atomic number 18, which is argon, its atomic weight is roughly 39.9. But the very next element, number 19, potassium,
It drops.
it drops. Potassium has an atomic weight of 39.0. It goes backward. The element with more protons is suddenly lighter.
Which breaks that fundamental rule we just talked about.
Exactly. And what we're exploring today on this deep dive is how that specific tiny discrepancy, this supposed quirk of chemistry has been basically weaponized by a theoretical physicist.
Weaponize is a good word for it, yeah.
Right. To write the actual mathematical equations for stargates and telekinesis.
Which sounds completely absurd until you actually look at the math.
It sounds like science fiction. But the source material we're pulling from today is, it's not a sci-fi novel.
No, not at all. It's a sprawling, incredibly dense theoretical framework. It was published in 2026 by George James Dukas, and it's titled Transdimensional Unified Field Theory V2.
V2, right.
Yeah. And today we're focusing specifically on the section detailing what he calls ether lattice field bridging.
Which is, frankly, a terrifying title for a paper.
It is intimidating, I'll give you that. But what makes this text so demanding and so compelling to unpack is that it does not rely on vague metaphysical concepts,
Right, there's no magic crystals here.
Exactly. It uses rigorous, inescapable mathematics. The author takes this observable glitch on the periodic table and traces it logically, step by excruciating step.
To completely tear down our current understanding of reality. So that's our mission for this deep dive. For you listening, we're going to start with grounded, accepted nuclear physics, and we're going to follow the math.
All the way down the rabbit hole.
All the way down. We're going to see how a backward number on a chart you stared at when you were 15 supposedly proves that reality is a hackable geometric lattice.
It's a profound shift in perspective.
So let's get right into the anomaly itself. Argon and potassium, it isn't just them, right? I mean, there are other exceptions.
Right, there are three main ones. Cobalt is heavier than nickel, even though nickel has more protons. And tellurium is heavier than iodine.
Okay, so it happens a few times. And for decades, science has basically just hand-waved this away, right? Like, oh, it's just a quirk of isotopes.
Well, hand-waved might be a bit harsh on the scientific community.
Oh, enough, fair enough.
But it is certainly treated as a settled accounting issue rather than a fundamental mystery.
Hannah.
To understand why argon is heavier than potassium, you really have to look at what atomic mass actually represents on that table.
Okay, lay it on us.
It is not a snapshot of a single perfectly uniform atom. It's a weighted average.
Right, because of isotopes. And for you listening, an isotope is just a variation of an element. Like potassium always has 19 protons. That's what makes it potassium.
Exactly. The protons are the identity.
But it can have different numbers of neutrons, right? Sometimes it has 20, sometimes 21, 22.
Yeah, so you have potassium 39, potassium 40, potassium 41.
They're all potassium, but they have slightly different weights.
And the number on the periodic table is just the average weight of all the potassium you'd find if you, say, scooped up a handful of dirt on Earth.
Okay, so if I grab some dirt, I'm getting an average. But wait, what does that have to do with it being backward?
Well, that handful of dirt is 4.5 billion years old.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the critical factor the author seizes upon.
Geological time.
Exactly. Potassium-40, which is one of the heavier isotopes of potassium, is naturally radioactive. It has a half-life of about 1.25 billion years.
So it's slowly falling apart?
Slowly but surely. Over the entire geological history of the Earth, a massive quantity of this heavy potassium-40 has decayed. And the byproduct of that specific decay path is...
Argon-40.
Yes.
Argon-40.
Okay, let's pause there because the mechanics of this are crucial for the rest of the paper. We have a heavy version of potassium.
Right.
Over billions of years, it spits out radiation and transforms into a heavy version of argon.
Correct.
So the Earth's supply of potassium is constantly losing its heavy components, while the Earth's supply of argon is constantly receiving them.
Exactly. The heavy isotopes are literally migrating from one element to its neighbor over billions of years. That's why argon's weighted average is so high, and potassium's is relatively low.
Yes. And the author formalizes this by introducing what he calls the master equation for ether transitions.
Okay, here comes the math.
He redefines average atomic mass not as a static constant, which is how we usually treat it, but as a time-dependent variable.
Wait, so the mass on the periodic table isn't just a fixed number?
No. According to this framework, the mass of these elements is literally a function of geological time elapsed since the formation of the solar system.
Okay, I understand the geology here. Like, radiometric dating uses this exact potassium-argon decay to figure out how old volcanic rocks are, right?
Yes, it's a very well-established science.
But I have to play the skeptic here for a second. If this is just standard radioactive decay, well understood by literally any first-year geology student,
Sure.
how on earth is the author using it to build a transdimensional unified field theory? Like, it just proves atoms fall apart over time. Where do the dimensions in the ether come in?
That's the leap. The leap happens in how the author utilizes that time-dependent mass. In standard physics, we acknowledge the mass changes over billions of years, but we still treat the fundamental structure of the atom.
The electron shells, quantum mechanics, all that.
Right, all of that. We treat it as being intimately tied to the atom's mass and energy. But the author uses this time-dependent mass to prove that mass and structure are entirely divorced from one another.
Divorced, like they don't affect each other at all.
Exactly. And to prove this, he translates the atomic data into two very distinct mathematical coordinates.
Okay, the coordinates. This is where the paper starts getting really intense.
Yes, the D coordinate and the K coordinate.
Let's break those down because, honestly, this is where the math started to hurt my head a little bit. What exactly is the D coordinate?
D stands for the structural density, or mass-derived coordinate. The author doesn't just plot the raw atomic mass, he applies a continuous logarithmic transformation to it.
A logarithmic transformation, okay.
He takes that time-dependent average atomic mass we just talked about, divides it by the rest mass of an electron, and then takes the logarithm.
And he doesn't just use any base for the logarithm, right? He uses the golden ratio.
Yes.
Whoa, okay. There's a lot to unpack there. First, why a logarithm? Like, if I want to plot how heavy a bowling ball is, I don't use a logarithm, I just use its weight.
Right, but logarithms are necessary when you are dealing with exponential scales or recursive systems. Think of the Richter scale for earthquakes,
Oh, right. A magnitude 6 isn't just a little stronger than a 5?
It's 10 times stronger. Logarithms compress massive multiplying forces into a smooth, manageable curve. By putting mass on a logarithmic scale, the author is basically stating that atomic mass isn't just piling up linearly like stacking blocks.
It's scaling geometrically.
Exactly.
And he uses the golden ratio, phi, as the base of that logarithm. For you listening, phi is roughly 1.618.
The Fibonacci sequence, essentially.
Yeah, we see it in sunflower seeds, spiral galaxies, nautilus shells. It's basically nature's favorite geometry for things that grow outward while keeping their shape.
Precisely. So by using phi, the author is baking this concept of self-similar fractal growth right into the fundamental measurement of an atom's mass.
That's wild. Okay, so that's the core argument for D. The D coordinate treats mass as this continuous smooth ramp of geometric growth. As elements get heavier, their D value slides smoothly up this continuous scale.
Yes, a continuous ramp. Now, contrast that with a K coordinate.
Right, the K coordinate, the structural one.
Yes, K is a discrete index, and it's based entirely on electron shell boundaries.
Because electrons don't just float around randomly.
Right. In quantum mechanics, electrons live in highly specific quantized shells around the nucleus. When one shell fills up, a new one starts.
Like layers of an onion.
Exactly. And the K coordinate simply numbers these structural tiers. It jumps in whole numbers. K equals 0, then 1, then 2, then 3.
Okay, so I'm picturing this. D is continuous, like a smooth ramp scaling up with the mass.
Yes.
And K is discrete, like a staircase, only stepping up when a new structural threshold is met.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Now, early in the text, the author points out something that seems to contradict his own point. He says that if you run a statistical regression across all the elements, comparing their mass on the D ramp to their structure on the K staircase, you get a 98.8% correlation.
Which is an overwhelmingly high correlation.
Right. Like, in almost any field of science, if you see a 98.8% match between two things, your immediate assumption is causation. You'd assume that as D increases, it physically forces K to increase.
You would, but the author aggressively rejects that conclusion.
He says an equation like K equals a function of D flat out does not exist in nature.
Right. He calls that 98.8% match an illusion of transitive dependence.
Transitive dependence, meaning what, exactly?
It occurs when two variables appear closely linked, but only because they are both independently tethered to a third upstream variable.
Oh, I see.
In this case, both mass and electron shells grow as you add protons to the atomic number Z. But they don't cause each other to grow.
It makes me think of human growth. Like, if you take a massive data set of children and compare their chronological age in years to the number of adult teeth they have, you will find a massive statistical correlation.
Sure, as age goes up, adult teeth go up.
Right. But the passage of time your age doesn't magically cause calcium to just form in your jaw.
No, the biological maturity of your DNA is the upstream variable driving both the clock and the teeth.
Exactly. And the real proof that age and teeth are fundamentally decoupled is that eventually the continuous variable keeps going while the discrete one stops.
Right.
Your age keeps going up continuously until you die, but your tooth count hits 32 and just stops discretely.
That captures the structural disconnect perfectly. And in the periodic table, the author uses the argon-potassium boundary as the definitive proof of this disconnect.
The ultimate stress test.
Yes. Because argon and potassium have essentially the exact same mass, due to that billion-year decay process we discussed, their d-coordinates are nearly identical.
I have the numbers here. Argon's d-value is 23.27. Potassium's is 23.22.
So out of all the elements, they're practically standing on the exact same spot on the mass ramp. The difference is only 0.05.
They're practically tied.
Yet, look at their K values. They're structural staircases. Argon is a noble gas. It completely fills its electron shell, closing out a period on the table. It sits right at a structural boundary, giving it a K value of 8.
It's very stable.
But potassium has one extra proton, which forces a completely new electron shell to open. Potassium drops down to start a new period on the table, which means its K value jumps dramatically to 10.
Okay, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this. The inputs, their mass on the D scale are tied. They're virtually identical.
Yes.
But the outputs, their physical structure on the K scale, are separated by two massive, discrete jumps.
Exactly. And mathematically, a mapping that assigns nearly identical inputs to wildly divergent discrete output simply cannot be a functional relationship.
It breaks math.
Completely. If mass and structure were actually unified under our current understanding of quantum mechanics, that tiny 0.05 difference in mass could not possibly account for the sudden, violent restructuring of the entire electron shell.
Wow. So the continuous ramp of mass and the discrete staircase of structure, they just decouple completely at this boundary?
Yes. D and K are divorced.
Okay, so D and K are divorced, but I want to bring up a specific counter-argument from the text because honestly it confused me at first.
Sure, go ahead.
The author dedicates an entire section to showing that if you calculate the d-coordinate for a neutral atom, you know, with all its electrons buzzing around, and then calculate it for an isolated nucleus that has been stripped of its electrons.
The d-coordinate is practically identical.
Right. Doesn't that contradict what we just said?
Huh.
Doesn't that imply a deep physical unification between the nucleus and the electron shell?
I can see why that feels contradictory, but the author strongly warns against interpreting that as physical unification. He calls it formula consistency.
Formula consistency, meaning?
We have to look at the sheer scale of the masses involved. The mass of an electron is vanishingly small. In a hydrogen atom, the electron makes up roughly 0.05% of the total mass. The nucleus holds 99.95%.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. So because the d-coordinate is just a logarithmic formula applied to mass, plugging in the mass of the whole atom versus just the nucleus is basically plugging the exact same number into the calculator twice.
Okay, yeah. If you calculate the logarithm of 1,000 and then you calculate the logarithm of 999.95, the answers are going to be virtually indistinguishable.
Precisely. It proves the math is internally consistent, but it tells us absolutely nothing new about the physics.
The electron's mass is just too small to move the needle on the d-coordinate.
Exactly. So the divergence at the argon-potassium boundary remains the undeniable proof that mass and structure take their orders from different places.
Okay, so if they took their orders from different places, where are those orders coming from? Like, if D and K don't talk to each other, they must both report to a higher authority.
That is the logical next step, yeah.
And this is where the author introduces the ether transition equation. He establishes this strict hierarchy. So what are the upstream variables sitting at the top of the chain of command here?
The upstream variables are Z, the atomic number, representing the fixed nuclear structure, and T, which is time.
Z and T.
Yes. Together, Z and T define a highly specific coordinate position within what the author terms the ether lattice.
The ether lattice. Okay, now we are crossing the Rubicon.
We are definitely in deep waters now.
For over 100 years, since like the Michelson-Morley experiment and Einstein relativity, mainstream physics has definitively declared that the ether does not exist. Space is a vacuum, a void. Why is this author suddenly reviving a concept from the 19th century?
Well, it is vital to differentiate the author's ether lattice from the 19th century luminiferous ether.
They aren't the same thing.
No, not at all. The old ether was hypothesized as a physical fluid medium that filled space. They thought it was a substance that light waves had to physically ripple through, much like sound waves ripple through air.
Right, and Einstein rendered that physical fluid completely unnecessary.
Exactly. But the author of this text is not proposing a physical fluid. He is proposing a purely mathematical geometric framework, a deterministic substrate.
A substrate, like the invisible grid lines on a piece of graph paper that dictate where you are allowed to draw.
That's a perfect analogy. The ether transition equation dictates that the grid coordinates Z and T hand down instructions to the mass silo, generating the D coordinate.
Okay.
And completely independently, Z hands down instructions to the structural silo, generating the quantum mechanical rules for K. The text emphasizes that this is a structural unification, not a reductive one.
Okay, we need to unpack the difference between structural and reductive unification because it really seems to be the philosophy driving this whole paper.
It is the core philosophy. Reductive unification is sort of the holy grail of modern physics. It's the attempt to compress everything into a single unified equation or particle.
Like string theory.
Exactly like string theory. It attempts to prove that gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces are all just different vibrations of the exact same tiny one-dimensional string. It tries to reduce all that complexity into a single blob of origin.
But the author is saying that's a fool's errand. You can't reduce the continuous mass ramp D and the discrete structural staircase K into the same string. They act completely differently.
Correct. Structural unification acknowledges that these phenomena are distinct and irreconcilable at their own level. However, they can be perfectly coordinated by a higher dimensional indexing system.
So they aren't the same thing, but they're reading the same clock.
Yes. Think of a computer rendering a complex video game. The software code handling the gravity physics of a falling object is completely separate from the software code handling the lighting effects on that object's surface.
Oh, that makes sense. You cannot reduce gravity code into lighting code.
No, they are written in completely different ways.
Yeah.
But they are structurally unified because they are both taking their coordinates from the underlying game engine's master clock.
That makes perfect sense. So the ether lattice is basically the universe's game engine.
Precisely.
But this brings us to what I found to be the most intimidating part of the paper. We've talked about the coordinates on the surface, right? D and K. But what is the engine actually doing? How does it render the physics?
Ah, yes.
Because to understand that, the text says we have to drop into the operator layer and look at the transdimensional lattice operator equations, the TDLOEs.
This is where the framework completely discards the foundational tenets of quantum mechanics.
Just throws them out the window.
Entirely. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in a state of probability. Schrödinger's cat is both alive and dead until observed. A particle is just a smeared-out cloud of probabilities until a measurement collapses it into a physical reality. But the TDLOEs replace that entire probabilistic framework with deterministic, absolute fractal geometry.
So reality is not made of discrete physical balls bouncing around in a void. According to this text, reality is generated continuously by the unified dimensional operator, the UDO.
Yes, UDO.
And this UDO breaks down into a cluster of 5 specific mathematical operators. Before we get into what they actually do, what exactly is an operator in this context for the layperson?
Well, in mathematics, an operator is simply an instruction that tells you to perform a specific action on a function or geometry. For example, multiply by 2 is a simple operator.
Okay, pretty straightforward.
In calculus, a derivative is an operator that tells you to find the rate of change.
Hmm.
But in this theory, the 5 TDLOEs are unimaginably complex geometric instructions that act on the underlying ether lattice.
So they are literally the software commands rendering the universe. So let's look at how they interact, because the text doesn't just list them, it shows how they cascade into one another, which is fascinating. It starts with what it calls the C clause, which governs photon plane recursion. How does that kick off the physical universe?
The C clause establishes the baseline propagation envelope.
Meaning?
If the universe is a mathematical grid, energy needs a mechanism to move from point A to point B without instantly dissipating into nothingness. The C clause generates a recursive, self-repeating carrier wave.
Like a pulse.
Exactly. It is the foundational pulse of the lattice, setting the absolute speed limit of causality, which we observe in our world as the speed of light, c.
Okay, but a wave of energy just rippling through a grid isn't matter, right? It doesn't have mass or structure. To get structure, the text introduces the second operator, the strong sector equation, which handles torsion cohesion. What is that doing?
This is a vital mechanical problem the author had to solve. If you have infinite geometric dimensions intersecting and recursive waves bouncing around, the math naturally tends toward infinity.
They would just spiral out of control.
It would tear itself apart. So the strong sector operator introduces localized twisting forces, torsion, and binding forces cohesion.
Twisting and binding.
Yes. These operators lock the dimensional shells together. They create stable, localized knots in the carrier wave, preventing the geometry from collapsing under its own immense complexity.
Okay, so we have a carrier wave and we have torsion knots giving it stability. But how does this scale up? Like, how do we get from a tiny knot in a mathematical dimension to something large enough to, interact with?
That brings us to the third operator.
The universe master equation, which governs d-ladder recursion. Let's unpack that.
Well, we discussed the d-coordinate earlier as a logarithmic mass ramp, right?
Right.
The universe master equation is the mathematical engine that drives energy up or down that ramp. The text specifies that this recursion doesn't happen randomly. It occurs in strict dimensional steps of 1, 3, and 6.
So it's not a smooth slide, it's stepping up.
Exactly. This operator is essentially a dimensional elevator, allowing localized energy knots to scale up in complexity, accumulating what we perceive as mass as they climb the d-ladder.
But wait, climbing a dimensional ladder infinitely would also cause a collapse, wouldn't it? Nature doesn't like infinite growth without a blueprint.
Right.
And this is where the fourth operator comes in, the fractal field equation. And this one blew my mind because it brings back the golden ratio, phi, and its inverse, psi's.
The fractal field equation acts as the governor of the system.
Keeping it all in check.
Yes. As the energy scales up the d-ladder, this operator enforces strict geometric proportions based on phi and psi. It guarantees that no matter how large or complex the structure becomes, it remains perfectly self-similar to the smallest structures.
It makes the universe a self-correcting fractal.
Precisely. If a localized energy knot begins to deform geometrically, the phi-psi propagation forces it back into harmonic balance.
It's basically tuning the instrument continuously.
That's a good way to put it.
And finally, we have all this stable, self-correcting dimensional math happening, but we need it to actually become physical reality for us to touch it. So the fifth operator is volumetric closure.
This is the transition mechanism. All the previous operators function in lower dimensional or recursive spaces, what the text calls d-squared surface recursion.
Right, they're like flat blueprints.
Exactly. Volumetric closure is the mathematical operator that forcefully translates that lower dimensional geometry into d-cubed volumetric space.
It pops it into 3D.
Yes. It closes the geometry into a 3D construct, producing actual macroscopic physical force and volume.
Okay, if we take a step back and look at these 5 operators working together, if reality is just math running on a geometric lattice, what actually is a physical particle? Like, what is an electron or a quark in this theory?
In the strict interpretation of the TDLOEs, particles do not possess independent physical existence.
They aren't real.
They are not solid objects. They are simply localized excitations or recursion modes of the lattice itself.
Just ripples.
A particle is just a specific harmonic resonance created by the operators. The text names them based on the math that creates them. A D-boson is a resonance on the dimensional elevator. A phi mode is a resonance in the fractal field.
I want to try an analogy here, replacing the video game idea from earlier. Imagine reality is a massive, multidimensional violin string.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The key clause is the bow moving across the string, creating the vibration. The strong sector torsion is the tension on the tuning pegs, keeping the string from snapping. The universe master equation dictates where you place your fingers to change the octave.
Yes.
The fractal field ensures the acoustics of the violin body resonate perfectly. So an electron isn't a piece of wood or a chunk of rosin. An electron is just the A note.
Exactly.
It is a specific musical chord struck on the D ladder that vibrates with such perfect mathematical stability that when we bump into it, we interpret it as solid mass.
That analogy holds up remarkably well to the mathematics presented in the paper. In fact, the text spends pages proving this through Lie algebras and commutation relations.
Oh, let's define those, because the text relies heavily on them to prove the stability of these musical chords. What is a Lie algebra?
A Lie algebra is a mathematical framework used to study continuous symmetries,
Symmetries, like a mirror image.
more like a rotation. Imagine rotating a perfectly smooth sphere in your hands. You can rotate it by a microscopic fraction of a degree, and it still looks exactly the same, right?
Right, it's a sphere.
That is a continuous transformation. Lie algebras calculate how these continuous transformations interact. If you rotate the sphere on its x-axis and then its y-axis, do you end up in the exact same position as if you rotated y first, then x?
Oh, I see.
Commutation relations are the equations that answer that question. They dictate how different operators interfere with or reinforce one another.
So the author uses Lie algebras to prove that the 5 TDLOE operators can interact continuously without the equations breaking down or producing some weird paradox.
Precisely. It mathematically proves the symphony can play indefinitely.
The universe is a self-regulating, continuous mathematical engine. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, there is a profound vulnerability hidden within the symmetry of these equations.
Yes. And this brings us to the most controversial, paradigm-shattering aspect of the entire document.
Right, because while I was reading through the dense math of the universe master equation, there are these variables that frankly look completely out of place in a physics paper.
They certainly jump out at you.
It includes terms labeled acoustic intent coupling and ZPE modulation. Now, for you listening, ZPE is zero-point energy. That is the baseline theoretical static energy of the vacuum of space.
Standard concept in quantum mechanics.
But acoustic intent coupling. The text explicitly states that human intent, like consciousness, willpower, focus, is mathematically integrated into the dimensional elevator.
It is the fulcrum upon which the entire theory pivots from theoretical physics to applied transdimensional engineering.
Engineering.
Yes. The author demonstrates mathematically that intent functions as a boundary condition on the Fissai fractal field.
A boundary condition, like the walls of a pool determining how a wave bounces back.
That's a great example, yes. The operators generate the reality, but boundary conditions dictate the final shape of that reality.
So consciousness shapes reality.
If consciousness can act as a localized boundary condition, it implies the dimensional lattice is not an inert environment that we just passively observe.
It is a reactive substrate.
It means the underlying mathematical engine of reality can be hacked.
Hacked by human thought. Which leads us to telekinesis field theory, TKFT, and Stargate field theory, SGFT. And I want to emphasize this again for everyone listening. The text does not treat these as science fiction concepts.
Not at all.
It treats them as inevitable, mathematically proven engineering applications of the 5 TDLOEs we just unpacked. So let's look at the mechanics of hacking reality. Let's start with telekinesis. How does moving a coffee cup with your mind actually work in this framework?
Well, first, it requires abandoning the idea that you are pushing a physical object with an invisible force.
Okay, so it's not like the Force in Star Wars.
No. In TKFT, telekinesis is the localized modulation of the d-coordinate, the structural density. To achieve this, the practitioner must induce a perfect mathematical alignment of 3 specific operators.
3 of the 5 we talked about.
Yes. First, the fractal recursion of the Fissai field. Second, the torsion cohesion bindings. And third, the volumetric closure operator.
Okay, so you have to align the acoustic resonance, the structural knots, and the 3D rendering engine.
Correct. When these operators are brought into perfect phase alignment, the recursive energy usually spent maintaining the dimensional ladder is abruptly converted into macroscopic physical force in 3D space.
And the human intent is what directs it.
Intent serves as the acoustic boundary condition, yes. It biases the direction of the Fissai recursion. It aims the mathematical output.
Wow.
You aren't pushing the coffee cup. You are locally rewriting the spatial coordinates of the geometric lattice holding the coffee cup. And the volumetric closure operator forces reality to update the cup's position.
You are literally dragging and dropping a file on the universe's desktop.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Okay, but how does a biological human mind interact with multidimensional math? Like, the text uses terms like DNA ZPE engines.
This is where the biological resonance comes in. The text posits that human DNA is not merely a blueprint for proteins.
It's something more.
Its double helix geometry functions as a biological antenna, a zero-point energy engine. Because DNA's structure is heavily based on phi ratios, it possesses the geometric capacity to resonate with the underlying phi-psi fractal field of the lattice.
So the DNA physically hums at the exact frequency of the fractal field.
Yes, the DNA provides the biological resonance coupling, tapping into the ambient zero-point energy of the lattice.
And the conscious intent provides the vector, the aiming mechanism.
Precisely. But the text is brutal about the requirements for this to work. It demands absolute mathematical coherence.
The coherence constraint, you can't just casually wish for the cup to move.
Right. No, if your intent wavers, if the phase alignment of the operators is off by a fraction of a degree, the symmetry breaks.
The Lie algebras fail to commute.
Exactly. The equations collapse back to their baseline state, and the cup just sits there. It requires a level of focused geometric coherence that is almost unfathomable for an untrained mind.
But if telekinesis is modulating the mass coordinate, D, what is a stargate?
Stargate field theory, or SGFT, operates on the exact same principles, but targets a different coordinate entirely.
Okay.
While telekinesis modulates D, which is structural density, stargates modulate T, the temporal density.
The time coordinate.
Yes. By applying the TD-LOEs to the T coordinate, the operators generate what the author calls a T-field well.
A well in time.
In standard physics, gravity and time are inextricably linked. A massive planet bends time around a right.
Right, time moves slower near a black hole.
The text mathematically represents this as the gravity-time coupling, G of T. A stargate forcibly alters this temporal density, bending the G of T curve to extreme parameters without needing the mass of a black hole to do it.
And what does bending time artificially actually achieve, like practically?
It creates a localized transit corridor. By severely warping the temporal density, a localized zone is decoupled from the surrounding space-time metric.
It folds space.
But effectively folds the ether lattice, connecting two regions of the manifold that are separated by vast distances in standard 3D space.
This was the most elegant and terrifying revelation in the entire paper for me. Stargates and telekinesis are not two different branches of physics.
No, they're the exact same technology.
They are unified by the same operator algebra. Stargates are merely large-scale telekinesis applied to time, and telekinesis is micro-scale Stargate physics applied to structure.
You're using the exact same software commands.
Modulating D moves a localized object across space. Modulating T folds the space itself.
Correct.
But presumably you can't just use biological DNA resonance to open a wormhole, right? The energy requirements must be insane. The text mentions dodecahedral CEG operators. What are those?
Well, while human DNA might theoretically handle the micromodulation of D, bending the T coordinate requires sustained macroscopic temporal density gradients.
So you need a machine.
The text implies that stargates require massive mechanical or geometric architectures. A dodecahedron is a 12-sided geometric solid where every face is a regular pentagon.
Right, like a multi-sided die.
And it is entirely constructed from golden ratio phi proportions.
So it's a giant artificial resonating chamber for the fractal field equation.
Exactly. The CEG likely stands for coherent energy geometry or something mathematically synonymous. These dodecahedral operators act as macroscopic tuning forks,
Forcing space-time to bend.
mathematically forcing the local spacetime to conform to the extreme phi-psi torsion required to punch a hole in the temporal density.
But just like telekinesis, if a geometric coherence of the machine drops by even a fraction of a percent,
The T-field will collapses instantly. It is an all-or-nothing physics.
and it completely bypasses the 20th century. Neither TKFT nor SGFT rely on Einstein's relativity to bend spacetime, and they don't rely on Schrödinger's probability waves to manipulate particles.
No, it is pure deterministic TD-LOE recursion math.
Which brings us to the grand finale of the author's work, the synthesis of everything we've talked about today into one final architecture. The DZKT manifold and the master codex equation.
This is where the sheer scale of the theoretical framework becomes apparent. The author takes the isolated coordinates we've explored and locks them into a single four-coordinate manifold.
Okay, let's list them out.
We have D for depth, representing structural mass recursion.
Yep, the mass ramp,
We have Z for the structural index, the atomic number.
the protons.
We have K the discrete electron shell
The
tier, and
staircase,
T, the temporal density governing gravity and time.
the DZKT manifold. And the appendices of this paper map out how these four dimensions interact with, like, terrifying precision.
It's incredibly detailed.
The D ladder climbs up and down in its strict recursive steps of 1, 3, and 6. The Z coordinate marches forward linearly, adding one proton at a time. The K coordinate snaps violently between its discrete quantum boundaries, 0 to 5. And the T coordinate bends continuously to accommodate temporal shifts.
They form the complete geometric sandbox of reality. And the engine running that sandbox is the master codex equation.
The master codex. One equation to rule them all.
It is a singular massive operator equation. It is the absolute mathematical integration of the 5 TD-LOEs acting upon the 4-coordinate DZKT manifold.
And what does it do?
According to the text, this single expression generates all observable fields, all particles, all quantum potentials, and all macroscopic physical forces.
Everything.
It defines the energy required for telekinesis. It calculates the metric tensor and gauge field strength for a stargate.
Let's talk about gauge field strength for a second, because that term, it really grounds this crazy theory back in real physics. In standard physics, gauge fields are what mediate forces, right? Like photons carrying the electromagnetic force.
Exactly.
So gauge field strength is basically a measure of how intense the correction needs to be to maintain mathematical symmetry when you move things around in a field.
Yes. And by assigning a gauge field strength to telekinesis and stargates, the author is not just saying magic happens.
Right, he's doing the math.
He is quantifying exactly how much mathematical force the ether lattice exerts to maintain its fractal symmetry when a human mind, or a dodecahedral machine, tries to twist the D or T coordinates.
He calculates the absolute limits of the system.
Yes, he does.
If we synthesize this entire journey, it is genuinely staggering what the author has constructed here. We started, what, an hour ago, looking at a tiny anomaly on a chart in a high school chemistry classroom?
The argon-potassium anomaly.
The fact that argon, atomic number 18, is slightly heavier than potassium, atomic number 19.
A verifiable, observable fact of nuclear physics.
And the author used the unarguable accepted math of radioactive decay over 4.5 billion years to show that this anomaly means atomic mass is a time-dependent variable, not a fixed constant, a moving target.
Which logically forced the creation of a mass coordinate, D, capable of handling that continuous geometric growth using the golden ratio.
And because D is continuous but the electron shells, K, are discrete staircases, the argon-potassium boundary mathematically proved that mass and structure are fundamentally divorced. You can't draw a line between them.
Because they are decoupled, they required a deeper underlying matrix to coordinate them, the ether lattice, driven by the upstream variables of atomic number and time.
Exploring that lattice forced the abandonment of probabilistic quantum mechanics, revealing the true deterministic engine, the TD-LOEs, 5 operator equations governing carrier waves, torsion knots, dimensional elevators, fractal geometry, and volumetric rendering.
And analyzing the Lie algebra symmetries of those operators revealed a mathematical vulnerability. The Phi field allows for boundary conditions.
Meaning human consciousness, coupling with the ZPE resonance of our Phi-structured DNA, can act as a mathematical parameter, proving that telekinesis and stargates are mathematically permitted behaviors of the universe.
The author literally built a rigorous, mathematically complete universe, complete with teleportation and mind over matter, entirely from the decay of a single potassium atom.
It is a breathtaking masterclass in theoretical extrapolation.
It really is. The rigorous internal consistency forces the reader to confront a very uncomfortable question about the models we use to map reality.
Yeah, if a mathematical model can be this internally flawless yet deviates so entirely of accepted standard physics, where is the line between a mathematical truth and a physical reality?
That's the million-dollar question. Does the math describe reality, or does the math create reality?
It leaves absolutely no exceptions without equations. For you listening, we've taken a journey from the bedrock of the periodic table through the esoteric geometry of fractal lattice structures, all the way to the operator equations for stargates.
Quite a trip.
It's a profound reminder that sometimes the most monumental, paradigm-shifting ideas hide in the smallest, most easily ignored anomalies. The glitch you thought was a typo is actually the key to the whole machine.
I would like to leave the listener with a final thought to ponder, actually, drawing on the text's core principle of the quantization of recursion and biological resonance.
Let's hear it.
We discussed how the TDLOEs demand absolute mathematical coherence and how intent acts as a specific boundary condition on the phi-psi fractal field.
Right, the idea that consciousness is a mathematical parameter.
If that is mathematically accurate, if consciousness and intent can truly modulate the ether lattice at an operator level to manifest macroscopic force in 3D space, does that mean we are fundamentally misunderstanding our role in the universe?
How so?
It implies we aren't just passive biological observers wandering through a pre-rendered dimensional lattice. Does it imply that by the simple act of possessing intent and focused consciousness, we are the actual operators, continuously writing and rewriting the equations of reality as we live?
Are we the glitch, or are we the programmers compiling the code? Something to think about the next time you look at a periodic table, or, the next time you sit in a quiet room and try to move a pencil with your mind.
Keep questioning the reality around you, everyone. We will catch you on the next deep dive.